From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
There's a battle going on right now, a battle to define everything that happens on the internet in terms of traditional things that the law understands. Is sharing a video on BitTorrent like shoplifting from a movie store? Or is it like loaning a videotape to a friend? Is reloading a web page over and over again like a peaceful virtual sit-in? Or a violent smashing of shop windows? Is the freedom to connect like freedom of speech? Or like the freedom to murder?
Today, we remember the pioneering computer programmer, cyber activist, social justice activist, Aaron Swartz. At the age of 14, he helped develop RSS, revolutionizing how people use the internet. By the time he was 19, he co-owned Reddit, now one of the world's most popular sites. He was also a key architect of Creative Commons. Aaron Swartz is now dead at the age of 26. On Friday, he killed himself just weeks before the start of a controversial trial. He was facing up to 35 years in prison for downloading millions of academic articles at MIT. His parents say decisions made by prosecutors in MIT contributed to his death. Today, we'll hear Aaron Swartz in his own words.
If we lost the ability to communicate with each other over the internet, it would be a change to the Bill of Rights, the freedoms guaranteed in our Constitution, the freedoms our country had been built on, would be suddenly deleted. New technology, instead of bringing us greater freedom, would have snuffed out fundamental rights we'd always taken for granted.
We'll play a speech Aaron gave last year and speak to Harvard Law School professor Lawrence Lessig, longtime mentor and friend. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The Obama administration's reportedly preparing to unveil a new push for immigration reform in the coming months. According to the New York Times, President Obama will ask Congress to approve measures including a new path to citizenship for some of 11 million undocumented people currently in the United States, as well as a guest worker program for low-wage immigrant workers. A bipartisan group of senators is working on a comprehensive bill that could be introduced as early as March. The administration's backing eventual citizenship after deporting more than 400,000 undocumented people in the 2012 fiscal year, the largest number in U.S. history. A number of civilians have been killed in an explosion that followed a U.S.-led NATO raid in Afghanistan. The victims reportedly died as they tried to collect the bodies of Taliban fighters who'd been killed in a firefight with U.S. troops around a mosque in Wardak province. It's unclear what caused the explosion, as the fighters had already been shot dead when the blast occurred. Estimates of the civilian toll stand at between 7 and 16. The latest violence comes days after President Obama announced plans to speed up the transfer of formal military control to Afghan forces. Appearing with Afghan President Hamid Karzai at the White House, Obama said a transition to Afghan leadership of combat missions will take place in the spring instead of the summer.
And today we agreed that as Afghan forces take the lead and as President Karzai announces the final phase of the transition, coalition forces will move to a support role this spring. President Karzai and I also discussed the nature of our security cooperation after 2014. Our teams continue to work toward a security agreement, and as they do, they will be guided by our respect for Afghan sovereignty and by our two long-term tasks, which will be very specific and very narrow. First, training and assisting Afghan forces, and second, targeted counterterrorism missions against al-Qaeda and its affiliates.
It's unclear how the sped-up timetable of formal control will change operations on the ground, as tens of thousands of U.S. troops will remain in Afghanistan until the withdrawal deadline of late 2014 and possibly even beyond. As in Iraq, a rejection of immunity for U.S. troops could prevent a large troop presence after the withdrawal. After returning from Washington earlier today, Afghan President Karzai said in a jirga or grand assembly will decide on U.S. immunity by the end of the year.
The decision regarding immunity for American soldiers in Afghanistan is a very important issue. Which condition of immunity they want from us. The government of Afghanistan cannot make a decision on this. This decision should be referred to the people of Afghanistan and a Grand Council to be asked whether immunity should be given to the American soldiers or not, and if we give them immunity, how and under which conditions.
According to Karzai, an initial U.S. proposal for immunity was rejected, and a second round of talks will be held this year in Kabul. In a statement, the activist group Voices for Creative Nonviolence criticized the U.S. role in Afghanistan, saying, quote, over the past 10 years of occupation, the United States could have assumed a responsibility to help establish a sustainable economy and infrastructure. Instead, the U.S. forces will leave behind many millions of war-weary, exhausted, and economically desperate people. France is in its fourth day of bombing areas of Mali in a bid to oust rebels that have held the country's north since March. The strikes have killed a reported 11 civilians, including 3 children fleeing the bombardment of a camp near the central town of Kana. France has launched the attacks in its former colony at the Malian government's request, backing troops from neighboring West African states who are arriving over the next few days. France's defense minister says the U.S. has, quote, seconded its intervention, reportedly providing intelligence as well as transportations and communications support. News of a U.S. role in the bombing of Mali comes as President Obama's confirmed involvement in a failed French operation inside Somalia. In a letter to Congress, Obama disclosed U.S. forces provided support to French troops in a failed effort to recover a French secret agent captured by Somali militants. The hostage, Dennis Alex, was reportedly killed during the failed operation along with 17 Somali fighters. Israel has cracked down on the latest nonviolent effort by Palestinian activists to stop the ongoing expansion of Jewish-only settlements in the occupied West Bank. On Sunday, Israeli troops raided a tent encampment dubbed Bab al-Shams, Arabic for Gate of the Sun, in the so-called E1 settlement zone that bisects the West Bank. The E1 construction had largely been put on hold following U.S. objections dating back to President George W. Bush. But Israel resumed work there last month in response to the UN vote recognizing Palestine as a non-member observer state. The activists behind Bab al-Shams pitched around 20 tents at the site Friday in a bid to oppose the latest settlement growth. Palestinian legislator Mustafa Barghouti said Palestinians are protecting the land of their future independent state.
This is Palestinian land. It is owned by a Palestinian, and we are legally here. And what you see here is the best and most beautiful act of nonviolent resistance. We are encountering the Israeli illegal settlements with building settlements on stolen Palestinian land by building on our own land.
The inhabitants of Bab al-Shams remained there until early Sunday morning, when around 500 Israeli forces raided the encampment and detained several people. Organizers say at least 6 people were wounded in the crackdown. In a statement, the Palestinian Popular Struggle Coordination Committee vowed to continue similar actions, saying, quote, this is not the end of the popular struggle, and it will continue in its full strength. An Egyptian court has granted a retrial to former Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak in his appeal of a life sentence for failing to stop the killing of unarmed demonstrators during the protests that ended Mubarak's nearly 30-year rule. Mubarak will be retried along with his top security aide, Habib el-Adli, who was convicted on the same charges. At least 20 people have reportedly been killed in a Syrian government airstrike in a rebel-held town south of Damascus. The Britain-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says 6 children were among the dead. The reported strike comes one day after Syrian opposition activists claimed 36 people, including 14 children, died in government bombings. On Friday, international envoy Lakhdar Brahimi held a new round of talks with top U.S. and Russian envoys in Switzerland with no apparent breakthroughs.
We stressed again that, in our view, there was no military solution to this conflict. We underscored the necessity to reach a political solution based on the Geneva Communique of the 30th of June 2012.
Haiti marked the 3-year anniversary on Saturday of the devastating earthquake that killed roughly 300,000 people and left more than 1.5 million homeless in what was already the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. In tent camps housing the displaced Haitian residents said international donors have left them behind.
My message to the international donors is that the money they gave to help the people in Haiti is being put to use for the interest of other people instead. It is used to buy luxury cars, pay for hotels, and go to high-priced restaurants, paid in U.S. dollars.
I don't see a future here. I can't hide anything from you. There is no tomorrow. Last night the children went to bed without anything to eat.
Appearing in Haiti to mark the anniversary, former President Bill Clinton, the UN Special Envoy to Haiti, was questioned about UN responsibility for the post-earthquake cholera epidemic that's killed nearly 8,000 people. Some 450,000 Haitians have also been sickened since the cholera outbreak erupted in October 2010, apparently brought over by UN peacekeepers from Nepal.
We have to speed up some of the infrastructure. We have to repair the agriculture. And we've got to build more houses. We've got to get people out of those tents.
And cholera? What about, you've said the UN introduced cholera to Haiti. Do you think they should be liable for all of those deaths? There's nearly 8,000 people.
I think that's a decision someone else has to make now. I think the most important thing is that the UN asked Paul Farmer to oversee the response. We've got the infection and mortality rate cut in half, and I think it can be contained, so I'm encouraged by that.
New cases of deadly gang rape have been reported in India amidst ongoing outcry over the death of a rape victim last month. 6 men have been arrested on charges of gang raping a woman on board a bus in northern India. Another gang rape and murder has also been reported at a train station in the state of Bihar. The attacks are likely to fuel protests that have erupted across India since 23-year-old Jyoti Singh Pandey was gang raped and mutilated on a moving bus in the capital, New Delhi, nearly 1 month ago. She died in the hospital 2 weeks later. Vice President Joe Biden is preparing to unveil the recommendations of his task force on gun violence formed in the aftermath of last month's shooting massacre in Newtown, Connecticut. On Friday, Biden capped a week of meetings with visitors, including both gun control advocates and the gun industry, by hosting representatives of companies behind video games that feature heavy violence.
We know that it is there is no silver bullet. There is no, as one of my friends said, no seatbelt that you can put on to assure that you will not be in this circumstance again. We have a problem beyond, quote, the massacres, the Columbines through the Auroras to Connecticut. You know, there's 10,000 people a year gunned down in our cities. Different motives, different reasons, different explanations, but you know, it's a real problem. It's serious.
Vice President Biden and other cabinet members are expected to meet with members of Congress to discuss the proposals at the White House today. His proposed measures will likely include an assault weapons ban, though pro-gun organizations are already predicting it won't pass the Republican-controlled House. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has declared a public health emergency in response to the flu epidemic that's spreading across the country. Cuomo's action came days after the city of Boston issued the same declaration. The flu was officially deemed an epidemic by the Centers for Disease Control Friday. In Washington, Anthony Fauci of the National Institutes of Health claimed a flu vaccine has been 62% effective and urged parents to seek it out for their children.
Whenever you have influenza, children have an infection rate almost certainly that's higher than you see with adults. Okay. And young children, when they get sick, they're in a very high-risk category of having complications, which is the reason why we want to vaccinate children, and the CDC recommends that children 6 months of age or older should be vaccinated.
Scores of activists gathered outside the White House Friday to mark the 11th anniversary of the arrival of the first prisoners at Guantanamo Bay. Wearing orange jumpsuits and hoods, the demonstrators called on President Obama to uphold his now 4-year-old vow to close the prison. Parallel rallies for Guantanamo's closures were held in Chicago, Dallas, Detroit, Los Angeles, Miami, and London. 166 men remain locked up at the prison, even though 86 of them have been cleared for release. A prominent immigrant rights activist has spoken out after her mother and brother were detained in a raid by federal immigration agents at their Phoenix home. Erica Andiola, who has played a leading role in the undocumented youth movement, urged an end to the raids in a tearful recording.
We need to do something. We need to stop separating families, and this is real. This is so real. This is not just happening to me. This is happening to families everywhere.
Erica,
we cannot let this happen anymore, and I need everybody to stop. To stop pretending like nothing is wrong, to stop pretending that we're just living normal lives, because we're not. This can happen to any of us.
Erica Andiola's mother and brother were released Friday following a national outcry by activist groups. A spokesperson for Immigration and Customs Enforcement has denied accusations the family was targeted for Andiola's activism. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. Thanks so much for watching this report from Democracy Now!, your daily independent global news hour. We don't accept advertising or corporate funding, but rather rely on donations from viewers like you. Please make your contribution by visiting democracynow.org. We need your support today to keep bringing you this hard-hitting, in-depth reporting.